from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Reverend Charles Harrison. And on this episode will be part two of a conversation that we had last week on Black crime in America, based on the Ebony magazine publication in 1979, looking at causes, consequences, and cures to what was a national epidemic at the time. Welcome back to Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and today we're going to do part two of this episode of a conversation that we started in the last episode, addressing the Ebony magazine article in 1979, and certainly that dealt with the whole issue of black-on-black crime. And certainly over the last 6 decades, for many in the African-American community, this has been looked at as a national epidemic that has impacted communities of color disproportionately. And today we're going to have another very serious conversation, about this whole issue, of black-on-black crime. It is controversial for some in the community because they argue that other ethnic groups have crime too. And is black-on-black crime any different from what we see with other ethnic groups in this country? And that's what we're going to explore today. And from the Ebony magazine, we talked about, began the conversation in 3 areas. Last time we really focused on the causes, and we spent a lot of time on the causes of what Ebony magazine back in 1977 believed led to more blacks being killed on the streets of America than what was killed in the entire Vietnam War, which was alarming at that time in the 70s. Certainly, we have seen, this play out over the last nearly 50 years in this country, where every year almost half the homicide victims in America are African American or people of color, which is alarming when particularly Black Americans only represent about 12 to 13% of the population, but they're 50% plus homicide victims every year. What's happening? And my special guests today are 2 former deputy mayors, Deputy Mayor John Hall under Mayor Goldsmith in the late 90s when I first got started and working with the Indianapolis 10-Point Coalition, and another good friend of mine, was known as the mayor of Hallville, became the deputy mayor under Mayor Greg Ballard, and served in that position for 2 terms, but's been very active, in this whole issue of addressing the issue of crime and violence as he served for years as the executive director at the Christamore House. So I'm honored to have both of these gentlemen with me today. And let's kind of begin the conversation about this. In the Ebony magazine, John and Olgen, there were 5 cures that they believed that we really needed to address and implement if we were going to turn these numbers around when it came to the level of crime we were seeing in communities of color. They talked about education, community environment, stop coddling the hoodlums. There was a term they used back then. You probably couldn't use that today. Number 4 was change the environment. And then number 6, a return to spiritual values. Let's kind of talk about that. I certainly probably would add some more, today. But John, what is your assessment of that? And I know you read the publication in 1979, and then you kind of introduced me to it.
The solutions that Ebony listed and you have codified in maybe 5 areas are so humongous that just looking at them, how do we even address it? Jesse Jackson back in the 60s, 70s, must have been 70s, 80s maybe, came out with his push for excellence.
Right.
And that was to do a couple of things. One, spur achievement, and that African Americans could do it. And then to give, I am somebody, to give that young man and woman the belief that their self-worth was important. What happened, as we've gone through, we understand urban schools have struggled to try to keep up the level of excellence that can portray young people coming out able to go get jobs that can give them a good quality of life.
Well, the question I would have, and maybe for John, both you and Olgen, is why have urban schools struggled when it comes to education? What is the reason there's been a struggle with urban schools when it comes to education? So, Olgen, I guess I would ask you, do you feel like there's been a struggle with urban schools when it comes to education? And if so, what do you believe the reasons are?
Yeah, it's obvious with our graduation rates in our urban inner city schools are so low. When you go from a student entering the 8th grade and track them all the way to the 12th grade, it's terrible numbers. If you do it at the 12th grade, numbers look good. But you do from 8th grade to the 12th grade, I think I'm not an educator. I was on 2 school boards, but I believe that's the system of education, the material of what's being given to the student. And I believe wholeheartedly is the parent participation in that child's life that make a difference. And I also believe that we have one of our failing points is the higher education system that produces teachers, how they're producing them and what skills they're producing them with to come out to educate kids to the urban environment. And also I believe that we don't have enough people of color or in the education system teaching our children, amen, and for them to see someone like them and understand them in there. So I do believe it fails. And if you look at the cities that had the greatest failures, of the largest city, who runs those cities, and that they all have a couple of things in common politically, and the other thing is they pour a whole lot of money, throw a lot of money at the education system, and per capita dollar for students, they're failing tremendously.
So does some of that start, and both of y'all growing up, here in Indianapolis or being a part of Indianapolis, I know y'all moved here from Indianapolis from the South at some point. Kids starting out behind, how much does that play? Are black kids particularly starting out from the 1st grade behind? Does that contribute to the poor academic performance we're seeing with a lot of, children of color?
I think it does. I think, of course, my children, I use them as an example. I can see the difference when they were able to they went to a urban kindergarten. They had 1 computer for the whole classroom, whereas my younger child, too young, they went to a kindergarten where they had 20 computers.
Okay.
Because they went to a township. They were still living, but they was bused. It made a huge difference. And I can see the difference in my youngest child that had even school education before kindergarten. He came out academically probably being the number 1. I could see the difference in all of them, and you got one old click computer for 30 students, and where you got a computer for every student, it makes a big difference. And then, so let me say that, so those children had to go to a system and compete with kids that had 20 computers where they just had one.
Right, right.
And so they made a big, and they started them off at the higher level.
Right.
They didn't come down to their level to start, so they were struggling from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right, right. This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and my guests today are John Hall and Olgen Williams, two former deputy mayors here in Indianapolis. And our conversation today is on the issue of black-on-black crime. The focus is on solutions, and we have talked about 5 solutions that were proposed by Ebony magazine in their publication in 1979. And the first issue certainly is education. The question that many have, and particularly my mother's generation, and I hear my mother's generation talk about, they're not for sure integration helped or improved the quality of education for black kids compared to when they was in all black schools. And I know there's probably a difference of viewpoint. Has the academic success, been greater through integration compared to when blacks were attending predominantly black schools and had black teachers? So I guess I would ask both Olgen, you and John, what do you think about that concept? Did integration accomplish what we hoped it would?
I think it's a kind of a mixed bag in the sense that I will agree that integration provided higher competition for those of us who went to schools that had high standards, high level of students. We were then pushed in to that competitive arena and were able to hone our skills as good as anybody. We feel like we could go anywhere and compete. What stands out to me, a little quick story. My youngest son, well, both of my sons were in township schools, but the youngest one, Stephen, went to Spring Mill, and he asked me to come to his school meeting that they were having at Spring Mill. And Stephen wasn't but the second, third grade. He said, "Dad, you're going to have to get there early to get a parking space." I'm not listening to him because I taught at Tech High School,
right.
and I've had not hundreds, I taught 7. So I had 4 or 5 years of these meetings.
Right.
And I go to Tech, and I would see maybe 15 of my best students' parents.
Okay.
And we talk about how good they were. So I take Stephen, and we're heading out to Spring Mill. And sure enough, I'm a little late, and the area is swamped with cars. And Stephen's looking at me like, "I told you." I get out, we go in, and teachers, this is something that I saw as an educator. The teachers at his school looked nervous. They had 3x5 cards, they had pens and pencils. And when that meeting started, those parents out there fired them up. "What book is my child in? Have you read such and such a book? Mm-hmm. What strategies are you using?" And I thought to myself, oh my goodness.
So these were the parents.
These were the parents,
Okay.
dead on them. I learned then. I could see that my urban school setting, there was not any pressure from parents in big numbers. And you're only going to do what you have to do.
As a child, when it comes to how your parents are pushing you.
You could see that the schools in the townships,
Okay.
those educators were held more accountable
Okay.
than maybe in the urban areas. Because the urban areas, there's so much you have to deal with.
Right.
If parents aren't preparing kids to go to school and be educated, you got trouble.
Okay.
And that, to me, is a big difference. along with the tax base for urban schools, the property tax base is lower. So you have less funding to do your job. However, what I saw was parents throwing it on those educators. And so they had to perform. They had to find new resources. They had to find new strategies to work because these parents knew and studied the system. Unfortunately, in the urban areas, the parents there who may be single parents, may be working, trying to survive, they don't have time to do research. They don't know. They don't know the strategies of learning and levels that child should be reading. And so that, to me, is a weak point in urban education.
When it comes to the issue of integration, for some reason, the national civil rights organizations, most of them thought busing our children to suburban school would create education integration. Better schools, better restrooms, better learning. Well, at that time I wasn't involved in that, but when I did get involved, when I did finally get involved as a parent, I thought busing was a horrible thing. When you got, not a horrible thing, but not a very good thing for our kids. When you got Indianapolis kids being bused to Southport, to Decatur, to Wayne Township, across neighborhoods from the east side all the way to Decatur, et cetera, et cetera. What I found out as a parent, the parent participation for those 6,000 students was much lower because they was doing good just to get to their job on a bus, let alone get out to Ben Davis for a parent-teachers night, PTA meeting, whatever. It was just a struggle. Like John said, they didn't know the system. They couldn't go. Ms. Jones' feet was hurting. She's working 2 jobs to take care of these children. And she get home, she taking them shoes off, relaxing. How she gonna get out there? Then she just don't feel like crossing another half hour, 20 minutes. And no, then she didn't love them. But I would say this, I did find out when I was at Christmas House, I created a celebration night for our children where we celebrated their making the honor roll. And when we started, we had very little participation from Wayne Township, but before we ended, I had the superintendent, the superintendent, all the principals, all the schools, the representatives, those schools, there at the Christmas House in the gymnasium. What did you find out? I had 450 to 500 parents show up just to see their children get a certificate, a little good bag, and meet their principal sometime finally.
Yeah.
Right.
They care,
Right.
but sometimes integration put a big hindrance on. My thing was we should have put more money into the system and educate our parents about getting involved and made it easier for them. But busing didn't solve our problem, especially when the kids first had to go to South Wayne, rocks were thrown at them. They would call all kind of disparaging names. They was afraid. If you look at you on a bus,
Right.
yellow bus, you're a black kid, and you got to go through Morris Hill to get to your school. Now, y'all know what I'm talking about. How is that better?
Yeah.
And you get there, and nobody like you. They snaring. So what your boys got to do? What they going to do? They going to be fighting.
Yeah.
When they use that N-word on them, they pride. It just hurt our kids. And they use our kids to run the football, shoot the basketball, hit the baseball. They was happy.
Right.
Other than that, the level of concern was very minimal. Mrs. M.G. Raby was one of the greatest champions for our kids I ever known. And what I heard tutor and mentor me, I probably wouldn't have got as involved either myself. But integration hurt us, and it took out, I say in Hallville, 5 resources, schools, they closed. And neighborhoods are connected with their education system, our churches. When you take them and you taught my child for 12 years, that they got to get on a yellow bus 5 days a week, 7 hours a day to get anything good.
Right.
So when they graduate, if they do, no wonder they leave our neighborhood. You indoctrinate them that nothing good in Harville, you got to get on a bus and leave. Because you told them that. All of them, because you closed the school. I'm a firm believer that I think I'm from Tennessee like John. In my first 7 years, I had all black teachers.
Yeah.
male and female, and they took pride in their college degree, education. Therefore, they brought it right down to us.
Right.
And you had a choice, all to learn them words, spelling words, or there was consequence. Now, people might not agree with it, but I knew the consequences with Mrs. Bailey with that power.
Yeah, when I went to elementary school in Jeffersonville in the black neighborhood, my school teacher was also my Sunday school teacher. Mm-hmm. So if I got in trouble at school, I was getting in trouble at home, and I understood that. You know, I understood that. You know, I wonder. It seems the IPS is trying to go more back to a neighborhood school model. Mm-hmm. You know, and there used to be, growing up in the Jeffersonville, Louisville, Kentucky area, when Male and Central would play, which was predominantly black schools, the alumni, they were neighborhood schools, and all the alumni would come to the game, you know, because it was a sense of pride. There was a neighborhood school. And I wonder if a better strategy would have been for us to push for more invested dollars to improve our schools rather than the busing, you know, because I'm not for sure it has produced the results that we wanted.
I think leadership, that was the battle during that 1954 Supreme Court case, whether or not to invest more resources or integrate. And I think what won out was the fact that there were leaders who felt we wouldn't get the same education, the same resources, if we stayed in a segregated setting. Olgen brought up all the good points that I would bring up. And so, you know, we are able to see where from that period of history, we've developed a 45% black middle class. So there was success coming out of there. But what I think Olgen is pointing out, Deputy Mayor Olgen, is that we lost a lot of self-identity and attention and concentration by being bused to areas where we weren't going to get attention, and more often we got attacked.
So what do you think about this? Is Reverend Charles Harrison on Real Talk with Reverend Harrison. What about school choice? Do you think that parents ought to have school choice today if they feel like the school that their child is going to is not conducive to them learning, or maybe a hindrance to them learning and moving forward? Should that option be given, particularly if a parent chooses to send their child to another school that they think is more conducive for their child to get their education? What do both of you think about that?
I believe in school choice, but you can't be tricked or duped or think that's the cure-all because you got school choices. If Johnny is not reading to the level, you're not involved in his reading every night, you can send him whatever school you want to. He probably doesn't do too much better. It's as simple as that. I believe that we have too many charter schools. We don't need any more until the ones that we have be proven that they're doing what they should do when it comes to our children getting the proper education. And we've been tricked. I think parents should have a choice to send their child to a school they think it can be better fit their child. But with that said, don't you think they're going to raise your child for you or educate your child to the level if you don't get involved because it's a charter or religious school or whatever they may call it, you can take that voucher. You see, the parents still got to get involved. And the quality of professionals and teachers at that school still got to be to a certain standard. But we don't investigate these schools anymore like they should. And I had a problem with you want to plant them all in the urban core. What about the suburban core, the outer ring? You know, now they finally do that. But I believe a parent should have a choice. But I think the parents should investigate that very closely before they make them. And I'm saying, John and I went to a unique school. It was integrated. We both Shortridge graduates. They didn't play. It was integrated. You know, they didn't play. When John know what I'm talking about, they didn't play. You're going to get that work or you won't be here.
Right.
And, you're not going to graduate.
You're not going to graduate.
You're not going to graduate. You can stay. That English 5 test.
English 5
Boy, look, I took it twice. I'll tell you where I was going from. I'm just saying, though. So, but you had the Christmas addicts.
Right.
Those, probably was all black when we was going. But it was graduating people, smart people.
Right.
Some of our future leaders came out, like some of the future leaders, black leaders came out of Shortridge. Yeah. Both was doing well. It just started to deteriorate because I believe lack of resources, and lack of parental involvement. Let me go back to Tennessee. When I was in Tennessee, we got the second of everything from the white school because it was segregation.
Right.
Secondhand class book, secondhand water fountain, everything. Didn't make no difference to Mrs. Roach. What year the school book? You was gonna read that book.
Right.
No matter what edition it was, you was gonna leave that class knowing how. Hey, John, knowing how to read that book.
I bet you.
You know what I'm saying? I bet you. So no matter, so they made sure they used what they had. In the same way, no matter what we put in the school, no matter where our kids go, I'm a firm believer that community parental involvement is so key. If you're single or two in the family, you still got to get involved. And you can't make excuses for your child. Like another game with their hip, but I found out there's lots of children that suffered because of that. Therefore, they became parents with children that still had those stigmas, those fears, that therefore keep them from it kind of grew from their lack of. So I seen parents that were scared to go in and talk to the teacher because they were scared of the system from their experiences with the system. And about parental involvement, and we need more good quality teachers that's willing to look like our students to get involved. I believe that.
I think all of us agree that education is key. I think two of the other things that we want to move to is community involvement and what role does community play, and the challenges in the 1970s when it came to children of color. Are they still the same challenges today that children are facing in the urban core, or what some would say blighted, low-income areas? And what role does the community play, which in many cases would also include the black church? How important is community involvement in helping young people get on the pathway of success, which steers them away from a life of crime and involvement in gangs and drug trafficking?
Well, I think Olgen was a prime example when he, as mayor of Hallville, I mean, you know, Christy Morehouse had programs and initiatives that really touched and addressed kids. Community involvement is critical, it's key. The institutions today, they're still here, the YMCA, church, Urban League. I mean, there's still involvement. There's still programs out there. The question is, can little Johnny get connected to that program? Is there transportation? Is there someone who has the information that they can get? Is that parent able to focus on that? And just as the 70s, it's still difficult. The parenting piece is the largest piece to the problem and to the solution.
Well, we don't want to talk about the parenting piece because that was the piece that wasn't in here in the 5 solutions that I would have included, because I think a major piece has to be parenting. When it comes to education, when it comes to getting your children involved in community activities. My mother got me involved in Little League baseball, Little League football, basketball. I ran track. I didn't have time to get in much trouble because she kept me busy, and church.
That's the difference.
Well, I agree 100%. Parenting involvement means so much. Look, my father died when 11 years old. My mother suffered severe domestic abuse after he died. She picked up a boyfriend. We moved up here. She was a beautician professional in Tennessee. She never did had her own shop, never did get a license here because she was 8th grade education, so a little more difficult up here. Got in, but nevertheless, when I'm out, the first high school I went to, I did well the first semester. The second semester, I started cutting classes. Got 4 F's and 1 D. She said, "Oh, single mother now," and she raising us off of Social Security check and card games in the house. In the genre I'm talking about. I'm saying she was doing her best, but she said, "Oh, Then she didn't beat me, but she said, you getting out of that school." And she took me right over to Shortridge, sat down with the counselor, and told him why she wanted her son to move. And the counselor, "Well, he did pretty bad." And I told him why. And they said, "All right, we'll take him."
Wow.
Let me get into Shortridge.
And that's a parent.
Yeah, that's a parent.
She said, "Oh, you getting out of there?" And then she was doing all she can. So it wasn't no excuse. She had no car.
Right.
But she made sure she saw that her son, because they sent the card home, John.
There you go.
They tricked me. And I'm rolling. I'm thinking cutting class is fun.
Yeah.
But I'm flunking all the time.
There you go.
Parental environment. Some say there's no excuses. And then the churches can come in
Right.
and help support those parents that don't have the support, the struggling and stuff. I just believe that. Stephen Goldsmith, John, former mayor he worked under, I got involved in neighborhood work because I got invited to a forum by his administration, and I heard Bob Woodson talk about neighborhood empowerment. Been an old radical from the late 60s and early 70s. Empowerment picked me up, and I said, "What?" And he got me in, and I got involved in neighborhood under Steve Goldsmith. People thought he gave me lots of money, and all. His administration, what they was doing, got me involved. And I stayed in Hallville in about 2 houses because I felt like I had a mission to work in my community. God blessed me with the Christmas House job. It was a blessing. I realized then that I had a place there to help my neighborhood be able to work together, help them. And that's why I got hit like Johnson. We had so many programs. In the churches, they understand God put you in these communities. You ain't got to go to Africa or to Haiti, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
If you want to do that, send me. But God put you there to help those struggling families. And I always said, I used to tell pastors, look here, help your people where you live. If it ain't with 2 families, 3 families, start a Boy Scout, start a mentoring program. Help them, use your church bus to help them get there. It means so much why I started my own mentoring program. But churches have such a key role. Most churches, especially post-COVID, are closed most of the time.
Right.
Except for one like Bourne's.
Right.
I give it to Bourne's, open almost every night. Can't have that.
Yeah.
Our children are struggling, and you being a black man, a black pastor, a black Sunday school teacher, or whatever, you know those children better than that teacher from Rushville or from wherever. You know them better. But we become afraid of our own people and own children. We can't. I know John was teaching. He wasn't afraid of the students. I see some of his students talking about Mr. Hall.
Yeah. But I think that's been, when we talk about community involvement, since I've been here in Indianapolis, and I got involved, in the late 90s, and watched what Olgen was doing in Hallville. I think that's been part of the strength of Indianapolis and why for years I felt like this city did an excellent job in helping to curb the level of violence, and it was a national model when it came to our innovative ways with Weed and Seed in addressing crime and violence because of the community involvement. I also got involved, in community work and going to a community meeting that the mayor had, and the church was packed. That night, when I was there, you had all these community groups and churches there that night. And we were there to hear, the pastors from Boston. But just the fact that the room was full that night and see all the community involvement. So I do believe that community involvement is key. The 2 other things, is this whole issue, what do we do in the community? And Ebony Magazine was pretty strong here and felt like that coddling the individuals that were terrorizing the community was not healthy and good for the community, and it only encouraged more crime. That's controversial today, and particularly with a lot of progressive DAs and prosecutors who believe in social justice and feel like that the judicial system has been unfair, particularly to Black Americans in incarceration. So now they have lumped repeat violent offenders in with the nonviolent offenders, and it seems like it's been a de-emphasis on incarceration. I'm not for sure that's been healthy for the community and what we're seeing today across the country. What do you think? Was Ebony on target back then in the late 90s in this concept that coddling hoodlums or what we would call those who terrorize the community has not been a good thing for communities of color?
It's been rough.
Yeah.
It's been rough. Violent crimes in the Black community has impacted in such a negative way that I don't understand this catch and release piece. Eugene Robinson, in his book, Disintegration, I believe that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
He talked about how urban communities were being held hostage
Right.
by the crime. And so if you're committing violent crime and then I can get out tomorrow, I'm right back in the neighborhood looking for you if you told.
Right.
Or looking for you if I need bail money.
Right.
And so, yes, to me, that violent criminal does not need to be pampered and allowed to continue his profession, being a crook.
I agree with Mayor Hall that I always not was taught and learned that there's basically two people in the criminal justice system, those that commit criminal acts and those that are criminals. And the criminals are one are repeat murderers, robbers.
Yeah.
The criminal act person is somebody like me. I committed a criminal act, went to federal prison. That's the only thing I done. Never done anything else because I got saved, came to Jesus.
Right.
But it wasn't violent.
No, wasn't violent. And so I didn't become a criminal. But I could have became a criminal.
Right.
Very easy by doing the next one, the next one, the next one. And then, like you said, John, where I was headed was probably violence, what I was doing. Those that are hurting Mrs. Jones, she can't go down the street. They taking her TV, bring to a garage. You got 17 convicted felons. Wait a minute. You keep on letting them back in our community, but you don't live in my community. You don't live where you live, John.
That's
I understand. I want to sit on my porch, like one of the council friends tell me, and be safe, my wife, without a stick or something. Because we want to see justice done from corrupt police and bad police. That don't mean we don't want law and order. That don't mean we don't want them people to be locked up. I believe people should be locked up and put away in a humane way, and give them a chance to make better choices, to maybe some training, some education. With that said, until they make their mind up, they don't want to do nothing until they make it. And then I think we should help them as much as we can when they come out. I believe they should be given a second chance through training and education. But if you want to keep on doing what you're doing, I just witnessed 2 homicides in my community. Beautiful mother, working hard, got an education, raising the children up, murdered by a vicious, evil man that had been let out of jail about 3 times for the similar acts. And she had warned them over and over, he gonna kill me. And some judge and prosecutor then said, no, you not getting out, you going to jail. Let him out. That same night, man get killed, criminal history, criminal record, out on the street, getting caught up in the same game. The game he's in, they killed him. You can't let these people get in. I agree. You can't let they terrorize the. Every time I do an interview or something, the Reverend has to know, we're subject to get threatened. We're subject to get because we write about law and order, about what's right, working with the police. What are you doing? You telling on? Look, I don't know what you're doing. I ain't telling on nobody, but I will tell on you if you're next door to me. I agree. I agree with the article though. We cannot. Why do you think we want these people in our community? I'm telling you, 98% of the people I live around and do not want criminals coming back, turnkey style, to do the same thing over and over and get on the same corner and sell drugs until somebody get killed or robbed. I agree with him, but I believe also that we have to give them as much opportunity in their life to make a better choice. And that goes back again with the churches. I believe the churches should be let in prison. I'm a Christian, so I believe in the church. They should be let into the jail, to the prison, to minister programs, opportunities for people to think about their life different. And they can, in the faith, and that's where they can come in. And we should have strong second chance programs for people to be able to get a second, maybe every time, third chance. But you got 17 convicted felon charges, and you still rolling in the street with
don't
guns.
make sense.
Well, but part of the problem was, that we have seen recently, certainly has been the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and it's almost as if the quest for justice through our judicial system, and particularly encounters with police officers, took precedence over what was claiming more lives in a month than what was happening in a year's time with black people's encounter with police officers and being killed.
Yeah.
But that was overshadowed by this epidemic that we're experiencing in cities all across the country. You can't turn on the news in no city in America today without seeing the face of a black man. And I may get in trouble for this, but I'm going to say it. It saddens me that the face of crime in America seems to be, what do we see? The face of a black man, and we won't deal with that when we know Junebug is terrorizing the neighborhood. So we want him to get arrested and get right back out. Well, he's going to keep terrorizing the neighborhood. And Little John and Big Charles, and Slick Olgen, we're terrorizing the neighborhood. But we don't want nothing to happen to those individuals. And then when you have leaders that say, we don't need to call them, and they may need to go away to prison, there becomes the big fight.
Yeah, you're right. And my thing is, who are these people? They say Black Lives Matter. You don't represent me. I'll tell you, Alden Williams, for one. I don't know who you are. You don't live in Howellville. I don't know where you live. A lot of them go back to gated communities, and a lot of them bought gated communities with the money they gave them from the donations and stuff. So I don't know who you are, who you say you represent us as a people. They get it confused. You don't have the same mission that Dr. King had and Rosa Parks and some of our other leaders before us, Malcolm X and different ones, and Moselle Sanders, and their mission was totally different than to burn down and to destroy and to even when they were riding King, Dr. King, and the rest of them said, no, it's not we're gonna get there. So Black Lives Matter rolled on a bunch of folks that were look at their history, look at their background. See, criminals do criminal acts. See, my sons and John's sons, they may protest or something because they live, but they're not gonna go work in a jewelry store to protest. They gonna say, nope, what would Dad think?
And what will Dad do?
What would Dad do? I remember I got a story. I remember one of my sons. I don't tell which one it was. He went to go get some milk on Washington Street, and while he was there, girl come up to him and said, blah 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 for this and that. He's naive, young, 18, 19. He said, 15. He didn't know it was a sting. He got burnt. They gave him a ticket. Let me tell you something. He came home that night. He didn't live with me, crying. Dad, he told me, I'm sorry to embarrass you like that. I didn't mean it, blah, 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 blah. He was so hurt.
That's how we raise our kids.
Young. And then the news guy interviewed me, and they found out about it, my son. I said, look here, he did wrong. you got to pay the price.
Yeah.
Ain't backing up that. Hey, I love him dearly.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have been.
That ain't changed.
He shouldn't have been trying to buy a woman.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
He had to pay the price.
Right.
I'm saying, so we got to stand up for what is right, no matter who it is, but yet show compassion and love like Christ has showed us. I'm preaching there. You know, with that said, and these people that say they represent us, and you make at the end of the day,
Right.
you gonna make my community worse.
Right.
60,000 people go to downtown. Used to go downtown Indianapolis every service workers to have a job, and you do something for Black Lives Matter, and most of them are black, and you shut them down for 2 or 3 weeks. What good have you done?
Yeah.
John, what good have you done? And you could have done it in a positive way and got the same message, a better message. Oh, no, I don't know who these people are that hurt our community. And then talking about, you got a foundation giving out money. Here you are, think you're doing good. I'm going to make black people like me because I'm going to get them out of jail and give them money. No, man, give me a break. You ain't, like John said, they terrorizing our neighborhood when you let them out the same night.
That's right. That's true. This has gone by so fast. This has been a great conversation that we have had. We're going to do a third one, which is the consequences of all of this on our neighborhoods. But I want to thank Deputy Mayors Hall and Williams for joining me today. Thank you so much, and we'll be back for part 3. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more real talk about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining me today on Real Talk, and I pray that you have a blessed and wonderful day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.